I do not believe that we are currently in a position to defeat these gangs. That's the assessment of our acting Minister of Police. It's not a prediction, it's not a warning, it's a statement of fact. Firoz Cachali says organized crime syndicates are growing richer, more powerful, and more global, while the police struggle with limited resources, infiltration, and an overstretched justice system. He was speaking this week in Nelson Mandela Bay, a metro where gang networks, drug markets, and extortion rackets are tightening their grip, and where patterns now mirror much of the bloodshed that has long been familiar on the Cape Flats. Just days ago, 8 people were gunned down in a shebeen in Philippi East. A mass shooting police believe was linked to organized extortion. So if the police are not winning, who is? And how close are we then to normalizing criminal power in South Africa? I'm really pleased that you've joined us, Minister. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, Bongani, and good morning to your listeners.
We last spoke, I think, some years ago. I think you were still Community Safety MEC. Just perhaps, because we haven't had this conversation since you've taken over, just give us a sense of what these last few months have been like for you on the job. You're an expert as far as this type of work is concerned, but did you have a sense of what it would be like actually being in office?
Well, it's a mixture. I think my past experience has been very kind of helpful. I kind of feel like there hasn't been, a 15-year interruption in a way. So I've got a strong sense of what needs to be done. But of course, this is a unique moment in the history of policing in this country. And yes, the evidence before the Madlanga Commission and so forth sets the scene for what needs to be done.
I was going to ask how much of an eye you're keeping on the various processes that are investigating alleged criminality within law enforcement, because all of that, of course, is part of the very reason you're in office.
I'm watching the conversation in the commission and in the ad hoc committee as much as I can, but I just don't have the time to be watching all the time. But it's important for me to understand the big picture and the detail, and so I'm a keen observer of, like many people in the country, on the goings on in these two processes.
Of course, but you'll also have intimate knowledge and information that we as the public might not. How much is what you are hearing, and to the degree that you've been able to see it, how much is it mirroring what you are seeing in the halls, I suppose, of law enforcement?
I think the broad pattern, if we're joining the dots, is quite clear. I think that the focus on cartels, the infiltration of cartels into the political process and law enforcement. We don't yet have the details and can't yet come to clear conclusions, but the broad outline appears to be that this is a challenge before the country.
How much are you looking over your own shoulder, Minister?
Not too much. I think I've got to focus on the reset agenda, on the goals that of improving law enforcement and safety in the country. But I can't be unaware of the context in which I have been appointed.
Gosh, let's come to the issue at Nelson Mandela Bay. I was struck by your comments there, as I indicated in my introduction, where you plainly said you don't believe the police are currently in a position to defeat the gangs. That was quite a striking admission.
Yes, but the context should be understood. The point I was making is that organized crime is evolving in this country, and that's part of a global pattern. and policing everywhere has to adjust and develop new capabilities which might not have been necessary, a decade ago even. And that's what the focus should be on. Now, in the presentation the information that I have before me, the police have definitely stepped up operations. There is an anti-gang unit made up of about 142 police officers. When I look at quarter one, that is April to June 2025, compared with April to December 2025, the number of search warrants, arrests, joint operations, confiscations of firearms, ammunition, drug confiscations, abalone confiscations, especially in the Eastern Cape, it's clear that the police have very significantly stepped up their operations, but so have the gangs. There's increased competition among the gangs. They're recruiting younger and younger people, and the shootings are largely attributable to competition among the gangs. So the police have stepped up. I think that we need to strengthen intelligence-orientated policing in order to dismantle the gangs. And that was the purpose of the anti-gang strategy that we developed last year after I visited the Western Cape. Subsequently, we've allocated R1 billion from the CARA funds. Those are funds not from the budget. Those are funds that are gathered through anti-crime operations. R1 billion has been made available for the anti-gang strategy. And we are now in the process of looking at how to monitor the implementation of that strategy. I will be visiting the Western Cape again in February. I have a meeting scheduled with Premier Winda on the 4th of February.
Yeah.
So that, we are taking action and trying to monitor the implementation.
Minister,
Bongani, I'll just make one, if I may, I just want to make one further point.
Yeah.
Dealing with the gangs is not going to be simply about law enforcement.
Yeah.
Those communities need development. They need youth development programs. They need more investment. There needs to be a focus on parenting, on education, and so forth. So we need a comprehensive approach, and that's why I also want to engage with all the premiers, the mayors, and so forth, because provincial and local governments are going to have a very important role going forward, together with the national departments that focus on, on the social fabric.
Look, but from a policing perspective, one of the comments you've made was how these gangs aren't simply local, that they're wealthy, they're organized, they're transnational, and often the police officers who have to deal with them at times are under-equipped. I was curious about your number of 142 officers, and I wonder if that's part of the challenge, the numbers, or is it skills, or is it intelligence, or how much is it because some of these networks are themselves able to infiltrate law enforcement?
Yes, all of that has some measure of truth. I met on my recent visit Chief Lincoln Daniels, a traditional leader of the Khoisan people from Buffalo Flats, who whose story was really touched me very closely. That community is under siege, really. He was explaining how they're confined to their homes because there's so much shooting in the streets. This is notwithstanding the fact that the police have definitely increased visibility. So following my visit to the Eastern Cape, I am going to have a new conversation with the National Commissioner to see if there are further steps that can be taken to strengthen those anti-gang units and to increase visibility. But my overall point is, and I want the country to understand this, is that organized crime is evolving. These gangs are becoming more powerful for the reasons I've indicated. And so we need to review the way we approach policing as well as the delivery of government services.
Minister, are you able to keep us safe?
I'm at the point where I'm quite clear about the priorities. I have 9 priorities. I can take you through the action steps that we're working on. I'm going to be explaining the priorities as I see them and the action steps in the next few weeks.
Perhaps this, yes. Minister, if I may, perhaps this. Sure. We'll certainly await that explanation and those action steps. But maybe give us one measure by which you and I could have a conversation, say 6 months from now, that will help South Africans believe that SAPS are no longer losing but turning the tide against organized crime. What's the one thing you can commit to that we can review, say, 6 months from now?
So what I am committing to is to be clear about the priorities, be clear about the action steps, and be clear about the monitoring and assessment of the impact on a continuous basis. So there's no one target, but I am obviously convinced that these action steps, the priorities that I'm identifying, are the right ones in the light of the challenges that we face in policing. I am convinced that the steps that we're taking should have an impact, and I expect to be held accountable in this kind of conversation with the public for the outcomes and impact.
Should we talk in a few months?
Bongani, I don't know if you remember when I was the MEC for Community Safety, I was interpreted as having said that I'm going to lick the crime problem in 6 months. So I'm not going to make that mistake again. I think that's really not the point.
Sure.
We need to improve the level of safety, and a lot depends on public perceptions about whether they feel safe or not.
Yeah.
I do say the public needs to understand that from my point of view, and I think it is clearly the government's point of view, safety and security is the number one priority. And everything else depends on whether or not we make the kind of progress that the public deserves in focusing on improving public order, public policing, and achieving safety and security at much better level than we are now.
And Minister, can I be clear from my point of view? I mean, of course, we must have accountability conversations, but I also want you to understand, and I think I speak for many South Africans listening to this conversation now, we are fully behind any efforts for law enforcement and the rule of law and order to take hold in this society. We're fully behind any efforts that will put the criminals that threaten and that terrorize our communities behind bars. And I think these conversations are in that spirit. And so whether now or in a few weeks or in a few months we speak again, I want that to be clear to you that we're fully behind all your efforts. And I appreciate your time this morning.
It's very much appreciated, Bongani. Thank you very much.
The Acting Minister, Firoz Cachali.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions,
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.